So I built a $1 billion real estate portfolio with over 13,000 units, and I started completely broke. Like, actually less than broke. I remember when I first started thinking about real estate investing, I was sleeping in my car because it was better than sleeping on the couch in my apartment, and I couldn't afford anything else. I remember watching those like house flipping TV shows, and I was just like dreaming about getting rich someday through real estate, but I had no idea how I was going to get there. Now fast forward to today. I just crossed the 13,000 unit mark, made up of apartment complexes, mobile home parks, and self-storage facilities. So what does it take to go from broke to owning $1 billion in real estate? Well, that is what this video is going to lay out. I want to specifically lay out like 8 principles that got me there. And I'm going to intertwine those with like lessons and stories from my past, how I use these principles to get there. And trust me, you want to hear them all, especially number 8, which is a principle that I believe is capable of getting any person to hit any goal that they set for themselves. I don't want to overhype that, but I'm not. I promise you're going to love it. I want this video to not just be motivational, but also to be extremely actionable. So do me a favor, take some notes and ask questions in the comments. I want to interact with people and see if I can help you guys get to whatever goal you're trying to hit financially. And if you find this helpful, the best way you can support me is by hitting both the like button and the subscribe buttons below the video. And with that, I'm Brandon Turner, and this is how I built a $1 billion rental property portfolio starting from scratch. All right, so my story begins way back in 2006. I was inspired to invest in real estate because of those like house flipping TV shows that I was watching while I was sleeping in my car. Now, look, I wasn't homeless, not exactly anyway. I had rented a 4-bedroom apartment for around like $1,200 a month with 3 of my buddies. And I stayed in one bedroom and I rented the other out for like $400 a month. And it allowed me to basically, live cheap. And then I realized if I moved out of my room and I rented out my bedroom, I'd actually make a bunch of money to not live there. So I actually switched between living in that bedroom to then living in my car and on the living room couch. And look, I don't expect you to suddenly go live in your car or on a couch. That's not the principle, but it does illustrate principle number 1 in my kind of broke to billion journey, and that's house hack. Like, this is the idea of living in a property while simultaneously using it as an investment. Now, some people do this, as I did, by renting out rooms in a house or an apartment, but the more common use of the term involves owning a small multifamily property, maybe something like a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex, and then renting out the other units. So house hacking is one of the core, key, vital tactics that anybody can do. And it makes such a massive difference to your financial future. Why? I mean, because the number one biggest expense for most people is their housing costs. So imagine being able to completely get rid of it or like substantially reduce your greatest expense. So all your extra income now can go towards investments, or you can reduce the hours you have to work at your job so you can invest your extra time on your entrepreneurial or your real estate ventures. That's what I did. But not just with that apartment. I ended up buying a single family home using like this 3% down payment loan program. I rented out the 3 bedrooms in it and I lived in the 4th. Then I sold that property a year later and I bought a duplex where I lived in one of the units and rented out the other one. Then later I bought another duplex. I did the same. In all these examples, I was able to live for free while also building up a few rental properties in the process. I would move out of one, I would turn the old property fully into an investment property and then go to the next one. I even spent a year living in a church parsonage. Like, that's like the home that's like attached to a church where the pastor or the priest lives, because this church actually heard that I did construction and real estate and they offered me a year of free rent if I did all the labor to fix up the property. I mean, I didn't live in my own single family home without a tenant attached until I owned well over a dozen investment properties. Far too many people worry about comfort now, and they sacrifice decades of far greater comfort down the road. And house hacking is also amazing because it requires almost nothing for a down payment. You only have to live in the property for 1 year and you can keep the loan indefinitely after you move out and move on. And finally, it's like training wheels for your future real estate investing. Okay, house hacking, amazing. That is lesson number 1 in going from broke to having $1 billion rental property portfolio, but it's actually pretty closely related to principle number 2, which I'm going to get to in just a second. But first, a story. So I'm living in that church parsonage and I'm trying to flip a house at the same time, and I'm doing all the work myself on the flip during the day, and at night I'm working on this parsonage. And my wife actually at the time was the primary breadwinner. She was making bank, a whopping $9 an hour working at Starbucks. And although I had done a couple of flips, I made a few $1,000, over that couple year period, I couldn't figure out why I never had any money. Like, when I was getting started in real estate, I had no money ever. And I know I wasn't making a ton, but I didn't think I was spending much either, especially since we were living for free. So why did I keep going under in my checking account? Why did I have that sick feeling in my stomach every month when my spending outpaced my earning? Like, there was never enough enough money to last the month. That's when somebody actually introduced me to the man, the myth, and to many, the monster, Dave Ramsey. Not personally, but they gave me his book. Now, look, I know Dave is a controversial guy for some, especially in the real estate world, and he doesn't really approve of doing real estate investing the way that I do it today and the way I like. But look, Dave's book, The Total Money Makeover, rocked my world. That book outlines that the problems that most people face when it comes to their finances, it's not so much their income. It's not even necessarily their spending. It's simply the lack of knowledge and control around both. In other words, they did not live on a budget. They didn't have a plan. They just bought stuff as needed and earned what they could and hope things work out. And by they, I'm talking about me. Dude, that hit me like a ton of bricks. I realized principle 2 in this broke to billion-dollar portfolio journey. You can't play big offense unless you master great defense. Offense, of course, meaning like the money you bring in. You go out there and get that money. That's your wealth. That's your income. Defense, though, is your spending. So here's how I got my defense dialed in. First, I downloaded my bank account statement, like the past 90-day statement, and I categorized each and every transaction, every penny. I wanted to know where everything was going. And I saw something kind of shocking, I guess is the best way to say it. I was losing $1,000 every single month. No wonder I couldn't get ahead. No wonder my credit card debt was growing every single month. I was spending $1,000 more than I was making. Moron. But this is where it gets fascinating. It kind of blows my mind. For this first time in my life, I set up a budget. I even went as far, my wife and I, we took all the cash we'd get from a paycheck, from her paycheck, and we divided it into envelopes. And each envelope would have a name on it, like groceries, utility, fund money. That's literally all we did. We defined a budget, and instantly, and this is the mind-blowing part, I was suddenly ending up with an extra $1,000 a month in income. From losing $1,000 to gaining $1,000. And I didn't change anything consciously about what I was doing. I still bought the food I wanted. I still went on dates with my wife. We didn't cut the cable. So where did all that extra cash come from? I mean, it literally felt like magic. It was shocking because I didn't feel I was depriving myself of any purchases. It just showed how much little tiny spending choices every day added up to thousands of dollars. Funny enough, the same exact thing happened recently when I started tracking my calories inside of like one of those like fitness apps on your phone. Just by tracking my calories, doing nothing else, not trying to eat healthier, just by tracking it, I ate healthier. I lost weight just by tracking it. Okay, but back to money. By having that envelope budget, I was making decisions both consciously and subconsciously based on how much money I had left. I don't know what I wasn't doing or buying, which means that stuff really didn't even matter to my life. It was just death by 1,000 paper cuts. So principle 2, again, to repeat this, is so important. Play great defense with your finances. But what about offense? I mean, once you're living fiscally responsibly, and like I was ready to make my millions and then eventually buy $1 billion of real estate. But it did take a number of years before things really took off. And first, I needed to achieve principle number 3, scalable income. You have to get scalable income. When people try to get into real estate, one of the first things that they want to do, you probably have felt this way too, is quit your job as fast as possible. And look, I'm all for quitting a job. Life is too short to work a job you hate and that sucks the life and the time out of you. However, for me, getting income that like has the ability to increase or scale your income without just pumping in more and more hours, that was vital for me to get to a point where I could scale to $1 billion portfolio. So what do I mean by scalable income? Think of it this way. If you work for a plumbing company, or you're a fireman, or you work in an office, or you work for the government, or in healthcare, whatever, chances are you're making a certain amount of money per hour. Maybe it's $20 an hour, maybe it's $200 an hour, but either way, you put in an hour, you get money for that. It's not scalable beyond the 40, 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week you can work. It's constrained by your time. And then no matter how much you make, you're likely spending the majority of what you make. Everyone does, right? Now, maybe you're a successful doctor or lawyer. Maybe you're earning $400K a year and you're following principle 2 and you're playing good defense and you're living on $100K a year. In that case, yeah, maybe you've got $300K a year you can invest and you put it in the stock market and 30 years from now, you'll be rich. My guess is though, that's not you. And most people watching this are not in that category. So they can't simply just live cheap and invest the rest. You need to make more income. That was the boat I found myself in on my journey toward trying to get $1 billion portfolio. I was flipping a couple of houses every year. I even had to take a job at a bank for a while that I absolutely hated, but I still wasn't cracking the 6-figure mark. I was spending everything I was making. I didn't have any disposable income, so I knew I needed to get scalable income. But how? I'm almost nervous to tell you what I did because I don't want this to be a prescription for your path. It worked for me. It doesn't mean it's gonna work for you. It's just one of a million things that could work. There's a million ways to achieve scalable income. So just before I tell you what I did, just know that this doesn't have to be your path. Let me give you a few options first before I tell you what my exact thing was. First of all, to get scalable income, you're gonna need to build a business or get a commission-based job. So I'm gonna start with the building a business. I'm not saying you need to go build the next Costco or Walmart, but having some business that you can scale up and then scale out of is one of the most common methods for building wealth. In fact, out of the more than 2,000 accredited investors who have partnered with me at my real estate company, Open Door Capital, I would guess the vast majority of those wealthy people own their own business in some way. Now, some are consultants, some own fast food franchises, some own construction companies, and many actually own businesses in the real estate industry. A great example of that would be like a house flipper. Now, look, I was flipping houses, but I never mastered flipping at scale because I didn't understand the next few principles we're gonna get to in just a moment. Look, I could do like one flip a year, maybe two, because I was doing all the work myself. I didn't understand how to find off-market deals. I didn't know how to hire people to help me. I also didn't love house flipping. Like, I liked the outcome. I liked the money. I liked the pretty house. I didn't love the process, and I didn't put the work in to be a professional house flipper. But one thing that I did, and I still do love, I mean, you're watching this video, it's writing and producing content for the internet. Like, I love this stuff. So I took a job, a job, that allowed me to do both. I started working for a little internet startup in the real estate space. I was employee number one at Bigger Pockets. I got some equity, but really it was scalable income that changed my life. You see, I negotiated commission on sales in the business. And then I obsessed, I'm not kidding, I obsessed about becoming the best at those online sales. I also negotiated commission on book sales that I wrote. And I wrote, what, like 5 or 6 books in 7 years? Many of you probably came to those webinars that I did. I mean, I did hundreds of webinars. Maybe you've been to them or you read one of my books. I've sold more than 1 million copies of these books, and that helped me 10x my income in just a few years. But I really want to emphasize something. This wasn't just luck. I mean, yes, luck was involved, but it wasn't just luck because I obsessed about my craft and I treated my job like a business that I owned. Like, I worked more than 80 hours a week for years when I started at Bigger Pockets. I attended training conferences and seminars, often on my own dime. I listened to podcasts every single day and audiobooks that were designed to make me better at my job. Even though I didn't get paid for that extra, I made a lot of mistakes. I tried things that didn't work. I took risks, but in the end, it did work and my income started to go up. And now I'm not talking millions of dollars. I didn't make millions of dollars, but I ended up with a few $100,000s a year in extra disposable income. And at the same time, the rental property deals that I started buying earlier, they've been climbing in value. And my cash flow from those rentals started going up as well. The great thing about real estate, of course, is your mortgage stays the same if you get a fixed mortgage, but your cash flow goes up because rents go up over time. So to sum up this principle, having massive income is not necessarily a requirement for a person to scale to a massive rental property portfolio, but it sure doesn't hurt. It's like a superpower. Now, fast forward a couple years. I'm making good income from my career. I'm dumping my excess into buying, a few rental properties every year, and I'm just sort of coasting. Nothing wrong with that. I could have settled down in that position. I mean, my hours were much more reasonable. It wasn't 80-hour work weeks anymore. I was enjoying my work, and things were actually pretty easy. My wife and I even found ourselves like pregnant, with our first kid, Rosie, something that I had wanted for like a decade. I mean, everything was going really, really great, or was it? There was something off. I could tell during that time there was something off. I didn't feel real great about my life and where I was. And when I really pressed in on why that was and why I was feeling that way, I realized that I wasn't competing anymore. I was kind of checked out. I was settling for what I had. I wasn't growing. And for many of you watching this, that might resonate. Now, maybe you don't need more. Maybe where you're at right now is perfect, or maybe you just hit some financial freedom number that's great, but stick with me on the remaining principles in this video because I want you to master these things if you really want to scale to financial freedom fast and then wealth after that. And you can decide later if you want to build $1 billion portfolio. But for now, let's go on to principle number 4. Now, in this one, I want to tell, again, a little bit of a story about a friend of mine. Maybe you've heard of him. He's on the podcast with me every single week, the Better Life podcast. His name is Cam Cathcart. So Cam is an incredible guy, great husband, great father, great dude. And his journey into real estate was nuts. So Cam was hanging out with a bunch of people who were active real estate investors, and all his buddies were doing like 100 deals a year. So when Cam decided he wanted to get into real estate himself, he jumped in and started doing the same thing. Cam goes from 0 to 100 flips and wholesales, like 100 deals in 1 year. Made over $1 million his first year. How the heck did he do that? Is Cam some incredibly gifted, ridiculously rare real estate genius? I mean, he's a good dude. He's amazing. But what led to that standout success right from the start was something that isn't unique to him. In fact, anybody can set themselves up to succeed like he did by doing the one thing that happens to be principle number 4. Surround yourself with incredible people doing incredible things. Like Cam did like 100 deals because that's all he knew. He knew an impressive group of real estate investors who were doing that many deals, so he just knew he could do the same thing and he didn't think twice about it. He didn't even realize that wasn't normal. So think about this. I mean, if Cam had been around people that were doing one deal a year, and they were showing him how they do one deal a year and how they've changed toilets and changed light bulbs and changed tenants, he would have probably done the same thing. And actually, that's why I could only do 1 or 2 deals the first year or two when I got started, because the people I was learning from, they were doing 1 to 2 per year. The people we spend time with influence us more than we'll ever know. So once I created a scalable income for myself, I found myself in kind of that rut. I knew I needed to surround myself with some just ridiculously inspiring people who were doing those incredible things out in the world. So I went out of my way. I mean, I really went out of my way to meet like a ton of really awesome people and developed some amazing relationships out in the bigger commercial real estate world. I started a mastermind, and then I also joined a bunch of other ones, and I found people who inspired me. I got my drive coming back. And yes, masterminds, they can cost a lot of money, but you know what? It was an investment that has paid back a millionfold because I got into rooms with people who made the impossible look like just another Tuesday morning. So what does that mean for you? First, evaluate the people in your life. Do all your friends just sit around on the weekends playing video games, going shopping, getting hammered at the bars? Or do you have some friends that are out there crushing it in business, crushing it in real estate? If you want to scale dramatically in your business, make sure you have at least 1 or 2 people in your core group of friends who are taking big action and doing awesome work in the real estate world. Now, how do you find somebody like that? Well, it's easier than you think. First of all, check out local real estate clubs. They're all over the place. These meetups that happen all over the country. There's people there that are doing what you want to do. And consider joining groups of successful investors and entrepreneurs like the Better Life Tribe. And consider maybe even hiring a performance coach who's going to push you to strive to be the best version of yourself. In fact, as I was joining all these masterminds, I hired a performance coach. His name was Jason Dries. I think it's jasondriescoaching.com. Super good dude, helped push me to the next level. And you know what? Also, go to real estate conferences. You can have a ton of fun there, but also meet people who are doing what you want to do. Yes, it costs money to get into these circles, but don't be reckless about it. But sometimes it pays to spend money to get into the room where those things are happening. So look, I was inspired by all those people in all those rooms, and I was ready to make it a reality. But how? In real estate, there's like an infinite number of ways to make money. There are a ton of strategies that do work, and it's so easy to be torn in multiple directions and want to do so many different things. But it is vital that you develop and employ principle number 5. Get laser focused on your niche and do not deviate from it. So pick the real estate niche and strategy that you want to do and learn it inside and out. Like really obsess over it. Get ridiculously good at doing that thing before you even think about switching to something else. I have this metaphor that I use all the time. You've probably heard me say it, but I think it really hits home. Achieve a goal is like building a bridge from one piece of land to another. Now, oftentimes we start building a bridge only to get it just a few feet over the water, and then we start building another bridge because maybe we get bored or we find a shiny new bridge. You know, for some reason we switch to another bridge, and then we end up with another bridge and another, and eventually we end up with a ton of incomplete bridges that each one only goes a few feet out in the water and they get us nowhere. Instead, what I have learned is that I need to focus on building one bridge with consistency and focus until it reaches the destination. So if you do short-term rentals, stick with short-term rentals. If you invest in assisted living, keep it going. Now for me, I wanted to invest in mobile home parks. So I ended up founding a company called Open Door Capital. It's my real estate investing firm. We focus solely on investing in mobile home parks, at least in the beginning. Today we do several different asset classes, but we didn't even touch those other asset classes for years. We got laser focused on that niche, and we ended up having tremendous success in that field. So pick a lane, stay in that lane, and keep your foot on the gas until you reach the finish line. And hey, by the way, if you want a free ebook I wrote about some different options that are out there, like cash flow vehicles is what I call them. I made this ebook. It's real simple. It's like 19 different cash flow vehicles that work in this market, in this economy. Just go over to my Instagram and DM me the word fringe, like FRINGE, because these are kind of fringe strategies, not the normal ones. And I'll shoot it to you 100% for free. So I got my niche, my little fringe niche, but the next step is one that I didn't understand very well early early in my career, but it was really important for getting that big B number, that billion-dollar portfolio. And that's principle number 6. Utilize the power of OPT, other people's time. So in my house flipping days, I was what I would call a DIYer. Like I thought everything I needed to do needed to be done by me. And I mean everything. Now that's fine sometimes for starting out, but I knew I couldn't DIY my way to a massive business. I would need to scale. I would need to approach things differently. Now today I kind of explain this by looking at this pyramid of what it takes to scale a business and the different mindsets you have to have. So the 4 levels of the pyramid, at the bottom, let's start there, you have your DIYer. So many people start up, but you don't actually have to, but a lot of people do. That's when you do all the work, you think you can't hire anyone to help you, you're the only one that can do what you do, you can't afford to hire people. And again, if you want to scale, it's going to be hard to do it at that level. So the second level is what I call the manager level. A person on that level, they hire out certain tasks. They get their brother-in-law to change the toilet, and they get the other, whatever, electrician to come over and change the light bulb. But they're still involved every single day at the project or whatever they're doing. I mean, when I was flipping houses, I finally decided to get some help, and so I would have a guy that I would hire to come help me paint. But I still had to buy the paint, I had to organize the work time, I even had to help the guy get to the house to do the work because he didn't have a license. So I was doing the rest of the work in the house, but I didn't have to actually paint. I was the manager. Now that mindset did provide me with some more freedom and scalability than the DIY mindset, but it still required a lot of time and it really restricted my scalability. So at the third level, we have the COO. Now, that's like short for Chief Operating Officer, right? So someone working with the COO approach has a lot of the work hired out. Like they built a company and they oversee it like a project. They are the leaders, but they're the leaders that's involved with every aspect of the business. Everything really ultimately falls on them. It's still a lot of hours and stress, but it can be a highly profitable role and your work hours do start becoming a lot more flexible. But there's one more level of the chart that most people never actually get to, and that's what I call the architect. Now that's really a sweet spot if you want to drastically scale your business. A person who employs like an architect approach, they dream up the vision for the business and then they have other people build the business. So they design the machine, but they don't operate inside the machine. That's where I wanted to be with Open Door Capital. Now, again, to clarify, none of these levels are wrong. They're not right or wrong, but they have limits. A DIYer can only do so much. A manager can only do so much. The COO can only do so much. So if I wanted to scale, I knew I would have to become that architect. Now, a lot of you, I know what you're thinking.
But Brandon, I don't have the money to go out there and just hire a bunch of people.
But here's the thing, neither did I. In the beginning, I traded equity in the deals, potential profit down the road to my team members, and I mostly hired just friends of mine, instead of paying a salary. Now, once we started buying deals and getting fees from those purchases, I used those fees to pay salaries. But in the beginning, I didn't use any of my own money to build Open Door Capital. And speaking of money, that leads us on to principle number 7. So number 6, I talked about using OPT, that's other people's time. But closely related to that, and maybe more important, is using, maybe not more important, maybe, is using OPM, other people's money. So trying to hit that goal, like any big goal of real estate with my own income or with your own income, it's gonna take a long time, like years and years and years and decades and centuries. If I was gonna build a big portfolio, I had to do it with other people's money. So with Open Door Capital, I set it up as a syndication, which means I have investors who join me on the journey to buy real estate and make cash flow and split in the profits. Because of the money that my investors brought to the table, combined with my own money, we were able to buy way more real estate and scale way faster than if I were to do it all on my own. But how was I actually able to find these investors? To raise capital, it's tough. And I tried several times and I failed. But here's what finally worked. I realized I needed thousands of people, if not millions, to know, like, and trust me. So I needed to turn myself into a personal brand. So I grew a beard, literally grew a beard because of this. Eventually changed my Instagram handle to Beardy Brandon. I started posting helpful content all over the internet. I made hundreds of YouTube videos. I wrote 6 books, a habit tracking success journal. I interviewed over 500 people on a podcast. I spoke at dozens of conferences. I guess what I'm saying is I was just an overnight success. It was super duper easy. I'm kidding, of course. Investing in my personal brand over a whole decade, it was hard work, but it worked. People learned about me on the podcast or maybe YouTube, or maybe they saw my book on Amazon. They then followed me on Instagram or LinkedIn, and they started to learn about me, to like me, and to trust me. And when I finally started to land some actual great big mobile home parks, hundreds and now thousands of people said, you know what? I like Brandon. I trust that he's going to do the right thing with my money. So I'll invest into that deal. So in the end, my investors, they're happy to achieve their financial goals alongside me. And I was happy to achieve mine alongside them. It's a win-win. So the bottom line is find ways to use other people's time and money and be sure that the benefit spreads to all parties involved and you will be well on your way to scaling your business. Now look, you don't actually need hundreds of thousands of followers or the largest real estate podcast in the world to raise money. You could have 50 people that know, like, and trust you, and you could build a multi-million-dollar portfolio from just their investments. And then it can scale from there. And it does scale. Look, when I first started Open Door Capital, I struggled to raise $3 million for some mobile home parks. But within a few years, I was routinely raising $30 million in a week. Why? Well, I mean, we got better at communication, at marketing, at knowing what our investors wanted, at getting better deals, at talking to our investors, and our list grew during that time, just like it will with yours. But don't get overwhelmed at my big numbers. Just start where you're at and move forward. One more final note on this personal brand thing. One of the best quotes I ever heard is for any area of life, but it's so simple. Dig your well before you're thirsty. If you ever plan to raise capital for a real estate deal, even if it's not right now, start building your personal brand today. Your future self is going to thank you. And hey, if you're interested in a 5-hour video series I made all about personal branding for real estate investors, just shoot me a DM over on Instagram with the exact phrase personal brand. 2 words, just write personal brand, shoot me a DM, and it'll automatically send you some information about where you can find that. Now, I hope that these 7 principles have given you some incredible insight in how to scale your business in a big way. But this final principle is something that I live my life absolutely swear by. Without further ado, principle number 8. It's what I call the DCA, daily consistent action. You must develop the habit of daily consistent action. So when you're completely broke, but you have a big goal, let's say of getting to $1 billion of real estate, or you just want to lose 20 pounds, whatever, it gets daunting. But back to that bridge metaphor, when that island you're building a bridge to isn't even in view, it's so far away. The thought of completing such an enormous bridge, it's overwhelming. And so to that I ask, how would you eat an elephant? The answer, of course, is one bite at a time. Have that big goal, that island in the distance, in clear view, even if you can't see it, to know it's there. Keep that as your guiding post, your North Star, but don't let the distance from where you are to your end goal overwhelm you or stop you. When building your bridge, just grab the next plank, put it in place, and then find the next plank and put that there. Eventually, you'll find yourself across the water and on dry land. I mean, think about a runner, right? When runners are chugging up a long hill at a marathon, they don't look at the top of the hill and complain, oh my gosh, it's so far up there. And that dread and foreboding doesn't do anybody any good. No, they look down at the ground just in front of them and they keep going step by step. Before they know it, they're at the top. And when I look back over my journey from being broke to having $1 billion real estate portfolio, I can clearly see that it was a lot of one-step actions that got me to where I am. I didn't get to leap and skip a ton of steps to get here. I took daily, consistent action, and eventually I reached my goal. So I want to highlight that word real quick, daily. So using your goal as a guide, there's always one thing you can do to move the ball forward every single day, even if it's just an inch. None of us have ever stepped into our big dream and had it perfectly mapped out. So don't worry about how to do every single step. Just look in front of you and say, what's the next thing I can do that will get me closer to my goal? So as you keep taking the steps every single day towards your goal, you're eventually going to achieve your end result. So the important thing here, though, is to keep taking those steps. And as a side note, if you want to learn a little bit more about how to make that journey from where you are to achieving your goals more efficient, check out what we're doing inside the Better Life Tribe. It's the accountability mastermind that I built. We have over 1,000 real estate investors working towards setting big goals, turning those goals into daily action and habits, and then adding in what we call radical accountability. I mean, basically, it's a whole operating system for going from dreaming to done. Plus, 100% of profits of that go to the fight against human trafficking. I don't even take a salary from it, but I am working to give away $1 billion to those charities through the Better Life Tribe, so join up. So no matter what, don't stay where you are. Take action daily. A ship with its anchor down, it gets nowhere. So reel in that anchor, get that sail up, and get moving. It's the only way forward. Hope these principles help you achieve your major goals, build your portfolio, and improve your life. If you have any takeaways, insights, questions, throw them in the comments below. And if you have any advice for other people, share that as well. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit that little thumbs up button and follow me here for more. I'm Brandon, signing off.